you would please stand for the reading of God's Word. Numbers 18, 1 through 7. So the Lord said to Aaron, you and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear iniquity connected with the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you shall bear iniquity connected with your priesthood. And with you bring your brothers also, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they may join you and minister to you while you and your sons with you are before the tent of testimony. They shall keep guard over you and over the whole tent, but shall not come near to the vessels of the sanctuary or to the altar, lest they and you die. They shall join you and keep guard over the tent of meeting for all the service of the tent, and no outsider shall come near you. And you shall keep guard over the sanctuary and over the altar, that there may never again be wrath on the people of Israel. And behold, I have taken your brothers, the Levites, from among the people of Israel. They are a gift to you, given to the Lord, to do the service of the tent of meeting. And you and your sons with you shall guard your priesthood for all that concern the altar, and that is within the veil. And you shall serve. I will give you your priesthood as a gift, and any outsider who comes near shall be put to death. And God's people said, Amen. I want to begin by giving you, I think there's 6 verses from a sampling of the first 5 books, 4 of the 5 books of the Bible. Just listen to them and think about them. They're printed there, but it says in Leviticus 11, For I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourself therefore and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not defile yourself with any swarming thing that crawls on the ground. For I am the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. Leviticus 19:2. Speak to all of the people of Israel and say to them, You shall be holy, for I am the Lord your God, am holy. Leviticus 20:26. You shall be holy to me, for I, the Lord, am holy, and have separated you from the peoples, that you should be mine. Numbers 15:40 and 41. So you shall remember and do all my commandments, and be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 7:6. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. And the last one is from Deuteronomy 26:18 and 19. And the Lord has declared today that you are a people for his treasured possession, as he has promised you, and that you are to keep all of his commandments, and that he will set you in praise and in fame and in honor high above all the nations that he has made, and that you shall be a people holy to the Lord. As you read those, and that's only a sampling of the text just in the first 5 books of the Bible, 2 things stand out. One, the Lord is holy. The Lord God Almighty is holy. And we're going to be kind of expanding on this tonight. And I want you to think about this afternoon. What does it mean that God is holy? I have 2 things, 2 thoughts, 2 points to consider tonight. It has to do with his transcendence and the fact that he is immaculate. But there's one thing that's clear. It is inescapable to realize that one of the main points of the Old Testament is the declaration and the demonstration that God is holy. It's just, in fact, one Old Testament scholar said that the theme of the whole Old Testament is the holiness of God. Again and again, the Lord declares and demonstrates his holiness. All that he does for the sake of his holy name. And you know that. You can't miss it. You see it throughout all of Old Testament Scripture. That's the one profound truth these sampling verses show us, that God is holy. The second is that the Lord has chosen a people for himself, and they are to be holy. I mean, every one of those verses that I put up here, and I could have put up more, declare that God is holy, and he has chosen for himself a people, a special people, a people that he would treasure. And those people are to be holy. I mean, did I come up with anything from those verses that don't tell that, these two things? Isn't it absolutely, inescapably clear that God is holy and he's chosen a people for himself to be his possession, his chosen treasure, and they will be holy? Okay, there's one problem. There's a glaring problem and a certain danger. The problem is obvious, and we've seen this as we're working our way through the book of Numbers. The people that God has chosen were anything but holy. Right? I mean, they were a mess. Every time you turned around, what were they doing? They were making another god? I mean, and think about it. The first encounter of a grave fracture of the law of God is when they had been at Mount Sinai. They had heard the voice of God speak. I mean, they were terrified of God because, in fact, they shook and said, God, Moses, we heard the 10 Commandments, but we don't want to hear anymore. We're scared to death. Okay? You would think that would have left a lasting impression. I mean, how many of you ever heard the voice of God? I mean, literally. Would that not leave a lasting impression on you, would think? Okay? You heard, thou shalt have no other God before me. You heard that. You heard, thou shalt not make a graven image of anything. You've heard that. And you would think, if God spoke, it might burn in deeply. So Moses goes back to the mountain to receive the rest of it. And while he was up there only 40 days, what did the people do? They broke them all. Right? When they're coming back, they're hearing this noise, and Joshua thinks, well, they're just having a party, it's the sound of war, and he says, no, they're partying. And what are they partying over? They're partying over another god. What in the world? And that's not the first, or the second, or the third, or the fourth. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. They are a people who are unholy, and constantly expressing that they despise God, they do not believe in him. Chapter 14 we saw where they basically said, we're not going to go into the land. God, we need to pick for ourselves somebody who's going to send us back into Egypt. They prefer the slavery, the satisfying slavery of Egypt over the freedom of their God. Again and again and again and again, you see it. And I imagine if we took a piece of paper, you could all list of all, not just in the time of the Exodus, we could go to the time of Joshua. It says that the people of Israel served God with Joshua and the elders, but what happened after the elders passed away? Yeah. And then the book of Judges, is that a beautiful picture? I mean, they're never going to make that into a movie. I mean, they did Samson and Delilah, but I mean, it's disgusting, isn't it? It's horrible. It goes on and on. The history of Israel, you got a few good kings, it goes on and on and on. The problem is evident. They are not holy. They demonstrated again and again that they were not holy, and it seems they had no interest in being holy. That leads to the danger. Because God is holy, wrath is his reaction to his people's unholiness. Now, we live in a day and age, as we have seen in those videos, that it is not right and proper to speak of God having wrath. There's no such thing as a wrathful or angry God. That's a poo-poo. Some of you have heard of C.S. Lewis. Do any of you happen to know who C.S. Lewis's hero was? Nope. That was his companion. His name was George MacDonald. Now, George MacDonald was, he was a fantasy writer and stuff, but he had strange theology. He couldn't stand Jonathan Edwards because he couldn't think of a God who was angry. Well, either you're going to create and fabricate in your mind a God who isn't who he is, or you're going to realize that God is a God who is wrathful and angry, and we have seen it already. Just the previous chapter, chapter 17. What happened in chapter 16? Remember Korah? Yeah. The earth opened up, and essentially he goes, we're all priests. We're all somebody special. We want to serve God our way. And there were 250 big chiefs, 250 very important people in Israel, and they wanted to be able to offer incense, and that's the ministry of the priest. And how did that go for those 250 men? What happened to them? They died. How did they die? Fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them. And then all of a sudden, all the people said, wait a minute here. That's not right. Moses, you're killing the people of God. And so all of a sudden, a plague came out from God and began to decimate the population. 14,700 people died. Well, I'm telling you, you can't escape the fact that God is angry. You have these two truths. God is angry because they are unholy. Now, that leaves a gargantuan, glaring problem, doesn't it? Here we have these two truths. God is unmistakably, inescapably, and absolutely and totally holy. And he has chosen for himself a people who are to be holy. And because they're not holy and he is holy, this equation results in the fury and wrath being poured out on the people who are not holy. Well, as we will see, what hope is there? Now, chapter 17 is the interesting story about Aaron's rod that budded. And the point of this was that God selected specifically Aaron and his children and progeny after that to be the priests, the go-betweens between God and the people. But we find in the next two chapters God's gracious provision. And what you want to see is this. This is the amazing thing. The whole Old Testament is like a mosaic, or like a puzzle with all sorts of pieces. Bunches of pieces, bunches of little pictures, bunches of little pieces that all will put together to present to us something of great importance. If I ask you, for example, turn to the New Testament, what are some of the words used that describe the saving work of Christ? What are they? Some of them. Regeneration. What else? Redemption. Salvation. And you can go through each of these, but you realize that you have reconciliation, you have redemption, you have salvation, you have the forgiveness of sin. All of these utilize like for example, forgiveness is almost a commercial term. A debt forgiven. Redemption is like you're in slavery and you're being bought out. All of the New Testament utilizes a whole series of metaphors and languages that expound the full work of Christ. And not one word is sufficient to do it. Well, the Old Testament is simply a bunch of pictures, little pieces put together, if you will, to get us a foretaste of what's to come. Okay? The whole purpose of this is to set our taste for and our sight on Jesus Christ, who alone is the solution to the problem. And to me, I just love the Old Testament because what it does, it just simply, it cleanses my palate in a sense to have a greater taste for Christ. Now, you think here's the children of Israel, and guess what? In a rare moment of clarity, they come to their senses because things aren't going real well, as you know. And then in chapter 17, verses 12 and 13, it says this. This is what the people say after having experienced the swallowing of Korah, the destruction of the 250, and the 14,700 that die in the plague. It says in Numbers 17, 12, and 13, it says, behold, we perish. We're all undone. We are all undone. Everyone who comes near to the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Are we all to perish? In that moment of clarity, they recognized the dire strait they were in. Now, honestly, I don't think people understand that God is holy. And I don't think Christians do. And we're going to talk about that tonight. What is the relationship of holiness and Christianity today? Within the New Testament covenant, not including or not outside of the Old Testament. But there's a cavalierness I mean, here's Korah. Korah is an example of a modern Christian. You know, hey, I can come to God any way I want. I can do it my way, and God's going to be happy. With the notion that God, if you ask Christians, you ask the modern thing, what is the premier quality of God? They will tell you what? God is love. Love, right? Love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. That's all that man can think. But you think about it, does the Bible say God is love, love, love? Does it say that he is love, love, love? Does it say he is holy, holy, holy? You know what it means? It means that everything about God, his justice, his love, his grace, his mercy, his justice, his wrath, everything is holy. It is absolutely holy. This is God who is. And these people, for a moment, and only for a moment, got the reality of what that meant. If God is holy, and we're not, we're undone. We are undone, and there is no hope. Now, this is the Old Testament dilemma. This is, God is holy, he chooses for himself a people, and those people are to be holy. Be holy for, oh boy. And when all of a sudden you look in a mirror, and these people looked in a mirror and they said, we are undone. Anyone who comes near to the tabernacle is toast. Well, what we find here is like another little piece of the mosaic. God gives us another example, another piece of the picture, so we can see his gracious provision. Chapter 18, which we'll look at this morning, or just part of it, and then is about the priests and the Levites. And next week, chapter 19 is about the rite of purification. We're going to talk about the red heifer, which is like, and people look at this and they go, what? This is all stupid and ridiculous and all arcane and insignificant. You have to understand something. What part of the life of an Israelite was untouched by the holiness of God? One of the texts I read, I think it's in Leviticus 11, I know, he's talking about their people to be holy, okay? Because he's holy. And it's in the context of what? Do you know? Leviticus 11 is what's Leviticus 11 about? It's the dietary laws. Okay? So, what you eat, who you marry, what you do with your money, what clothes you wear, how you plow your field, what you do with your time, all comes under the preview of God. And everything is supposed to be holy. From morning to evening, everything, every aspect. And for the Israelites, it was constantly a constant reminder every day, constantly, God is holy, God is holy, God is holy, God is holy. And I'm supposed to be holy. I'm supposed to be holy in some way like God is holy. And then when that settles in, oh my, are we all to perish? Well, God gives us little glimpses and little pieces of this puzzle that he wants us, as the Old Testament builds in progressive revelation, puts it all together, and we walk in, and we're blessed to be in the New Testament, have all this to see. They look forward, often in shade and shadow, and we look back to see the substance. Now here we have, as I said, one of these examples, one of these pieces that God gives us. This morning we're going to look at the priests and the Levites. In this chapter, you see the purpose, the provisions, and the portion of the priest. Now I'm just going to look at the purpose, but you read on, it talks about that God provided for them. The priests and the Levites were provided for. God gave them a special way in which they would be given food and substance while they ministered and served the purposes of God. And then their portion, it's amazing, says God says to them, you're not going to have a piece of land. You're not going to have anything, to the priests. But don't be upset about it. He says, I am your portion, and I'm your inheritance. And you know what? If they got it and understood it, that was far better than a mountain or a valley. But I want to concentrate on what in the world was the purpose. He says it in verse 5, it says this. All of this, the priests and the Levites and all the things that involved and circled around the tabernacle and the ministry was that there may never again be wrath on the people of Israel. In essence, the priests and the Levites were to function as a barrier between the holy presence of God in the tabernacle and the people, for the wrath of God, so that the wrath of God would not break out upon the people. That was it. He says that. The whole, I'm structuring the priesthood, I'm structuring the Levites, I'm structuring the tabernacle and all of its pieces and parts and all of its rituals and routines. All of this is so that there might not be a burning that comes out of God to wipe people out. Now, that's really contrary to our thinking, because everybody right now thinks, most people are good. They got some infractions, they got some people. I remember talking to a friend of mine, his mother, and we were talking, we were trying to witness to her, and I was communicating the fact that there are none good, no, not one. And I'm basically a dirty, rotten sinner. And she said, "Well, Gary, I know. I know you're a lot better than you think you are." I said, "Well, you don't know anything about me." But that's. We pat ourselves on the back. We're pretty good people, because how we do it? Because we look around. That's how we're good at that. We compare ourselves among ourselves, and Paul says what? That's foolish. It's not wise. If you want to know who you really are, compare yourself to Christ, and that'll give you a good evaluation of really where you belong. Well, we have the priests and the Levites. The priest here. Let me go on to the next slide. Except I got to turn that on. Oh, come on. There. The priests were several things. They were closest to the presence of the Lord, and thus in the most dangerous of places. I know Bob is related when he worked out General Motors, and I've heard people, most people worked in relatively safe places, but there are people who worked around the crucibles and the furnaces. Okay? A misstep would end up in what? Not only just death, but you could fall in one of those crucibles, what was it, 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit? What would happen if basically a bag of water lands into that? You're gone. Now, the priests, every day, were operating in the immediate proximity of danger. One misstep would result in what? Remember that we were going through the book of Leviticus. On the day in which the tabernacle was celebrated, and you had the big party, and the ribbon cutting, and all the excitement, and it's finally the grand opening. What happens on the grand opening? The day in which all of this is taking place. Two brothers, Nadab and Abihu. And what happens? How does God celebrate the opening of the tabernacle? He kills two people. God, you really ruined this party. And God says to Moses, "You tell Aaron to shut his mouth. Don't say a word." Because you know what Aaron was going to do? What would you do? Well, you're going to say something. You're going to say something. He says, "Well, you might think it. That's okay. You say a word. You do anything to indicate you are grieving over this, you're gone too." Now you think about it. Every single day, the priests operated in the proximity of the holiness of God. How many of you are curious people? Okay, can you imagine you're a priest and you're going into the holy place and you're going to burn incense? Okay, so here's the altar of incense, and right here is this curtain, right? And you're not the high priest. Okay, but what do you want to do? What's the inclination? Yeah, well, what happens if you did? You did. You're dead. Okay? If the wrong person touched the wrong piece of furniture, you're dead. Remember David? Oh, he's excited. God always ruins people's parties. You know that? Here's David. He's excited. He's dancing before the Lord, and he's thrilled, and he's bringing the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, right? And it's on an ox cart, and all the musicians and everybody, and they're throwing out flyers, and this is a happy day, and all of a sudden it hits a pothole, and the ox cart goes like this, and the Ark going, and Uzzah goes, and God says, "Thank you, Uzzah." Is that what he does? What does he do? Kills him dead. There's a time when the ark is captured by the the Philistines, and it's brought back into the land. And all of a sudden, this little tribe, this little group of people say, well, let's see what's inside. What happens? Okay, so, it's like, whoa, you get the privilege of working near the most dangerous thing in the universe, God. That's what the priests were. Now, how stupid was Korah? Well, we want to be there. We want to be there. That's the arrogance of people without the understanding of the holiness of God. And God says, I have chosen Aaron. Now, what's really interesting, you read this text, and this is unique. And almost all the other times when God speaks, he speaks to whom? Okay, what does it say in verse 1 of chapter 18? What is it? No, verse 1. The Lord said to whom? Aaron. In this chapter, he's speaking directly to Aaron. You know why? He goes, I want to make sure you get this. This is profoundly risky business, to be in the presence of a holy God. Now, how different it is. We're so flippant. We're so casual about God, aren't we? We're so, he's okay with this, he's okay with that. There's almost no sense of the holiness of God in the modern church. For them, for these people, the realization every day, the priest, when they get up in the morning, and it's kind of like, and I understand this. There's a woman, her husband's a police officer, and going, is he going to come back? Right? It's a risky business. But it's far more risky to be a priest in the presence of God. She woke up, will he come back? If he makes one false move, what happens if he stumbles and falls into the curtain? I mean, it would, think about that. And that's how they felt. It says there was no room for error. It says here, interesting, that they were to bear the iniquity both of the sanctuary and the priesthood. So what? You scratch your head. You know what it means is this. It means this. Where was the sanctuary, logistically? It's the center of everything, but it's in the middle of a camp of people, right? And what was true of those people? Well, yeah, you could say they weren't perfect, but that's really a cop-out. I mean, that meant, nobody's perfect. It's okay, right? That's how nobody's perfect, so God doesn't. We're right in the middle of a people, a congregation of sinful, wretched, unholy people. And that defilement infected the tabernacle. And not only that, but who was it that involved and dealt with the pollution of the tabernacle? But priests who themselves were what? Sinful and unholy. The dangerous equation is unholiness in the presence of God equals wrath. And you have all these enumerated and detailed rituals of sacrifices and incense and all the things. All of it was to show that you could not and must not come into the presence of God in any other way but by how he has prescribed. To do so would be failure. And so the priest's obligation was every day, every moment, they dealt with the reality of sin and the infection of sin and the pollution of sin that we are. Okay, we are a pollution to this world. If you want to ask why there's so many problems in this world, it's us. It's not the carbon it's not the carbon we're putting in the air. Climate control. I got a better one. How about sin control? That would be a lot better effect. Let's not talk about climate control. Let's talk about sin control. Could you imagine some politician standing up and saying that? What would NBC News say? Oh, it would be hilarious, wouldn't it? Okay. They would just fall off their chairs and mock and ridicule. But this is far more serious. We are pollution. And the priests every day had to deal with it. And if they did not deal with it, you think about how many sacrifices they are. There was a morning sacrifice and an evening sacrifice. How many animals did they slice throat every day? Ghastly. Constantly reminding that the sin we are is a pollution. And their place of service was the holy place with its sacred vessels and the altar. Now, every moment of their activity, they lived in the presence of God and were constantly reminded of his holiness. And they served that. Then we go to the Levites. They were given to help and aid the priests. They were, as we looked earlier, and when we read earlier on, and you see it in the book of Leviticus, essentially they served as guards. They guarded the priests, they guarded the tabernacle, and don't think, though, it's a guard to keep people from treasury. How many have you ever been to the Louvre? How many have been to the Chicago Art Museum? Anybody there? Okay, any place where you have a lot of very valuable art, you have guards. Okay, the purpose of those guards, I remember, is to keep people from stealing the masterpieces, right? Or from defacing them or something like that. That's just the nature of it. And so we think automatically the guards are to, because a painting can't defend itself. Can it? A painting can't defend itself. You're not going to worry about, roll up and take it off. It's not going to come after you. This was not guarding God's presence and holiness because he was weak and unable to take care of himself. The purpose of the Levites was to guard and keep people at a safe distance for their sake, not God's. Or they approached too closely, as Korah found out, or approached wrongly, as Nadab and Abihu found out. The consequences would be absolutely catastrophic and fatal. So their job was to keep the people at a safe distance from the holy presence of the Lord. They were, however, never to come near the holy vessels, lest they and the priests die. I mean, there was a whole bunch of things they had to keep straight. And if they did not keep it straight, it not only would be their death, but the death of the priest. So in other words, if a Levite came in here and started putting the showbread on the table, guess who would die? He would. And not only he would, but it says the priest would die. So can you imagine? I mean, I go to work, and I don't worry about not coming home. Every day they went to work, so to speak, there was always a worry about coming home alive. Now, God wanted them to feel that. You go, well, what kind of God is that? A holy God. And we must never, ever, ever dispense with a sense of the holiness of God. Now, if you look at the tabernacle and the priesthood, basically it's almost a whole series of concentric circles of protection. In the very center is the Ark of the Covenant, right? That is the conspicuous place in which God says, that's my throne, and here is my presence. And was that out in the open? It was behind a curtain, the width of your hand, thickness. And did they have tours to it? Did somebody out there have this, come on right up here, for $5 you can tour the Ark of the Covenant. There's an entrance. There's no need for an exit. Okay, did they do that? So, who could go in there? All the priests? One man. Once a year, but not without blood, without a sacrifice. You couldn't go in there. Okay, so that's one. Then you have another barrier. You got the holy place, and you have these vessels here. Could anybody and their brother come into this area? Who's the only people who could come in there? The priests, not the Levites. The Levites couldn't even come in. Only the priests. Then you had a door into the holy place. Then you have the altar and the laver. Could anybody come to the altar or the laver? No. You had the court, but what was outside the court? You had a big fence, a cloth fence. Then you had the Levites guarding. You have one circle after another circle after another circle, protection, 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 to keep at distance the holiness of God and the sinfulness of people. Because if, as we have seen, and we will unfortunately see again, what happens when people encroach on the holiness of God? Yeah. Wow, that's a real serious problem. How in the world does that happen? The tabernacle, the priests, and the Levites, the wrath of God was an ever-present danger, for God was holy and they were not. It says in Romans chapter 1, verse 18, what does it say? For the wrath of God, can you finish it? Is now it's interesting, it doesn't say it will be revealed. Right now, the wrath of God is being revealed against all ungodliness and righteousness. Right now. When we go to the book of Revelation, it is a book of wrath, isn't it? It is God pouring out his wrath on all mankind because of their unholiness and sinfulness. To downplay the holiness of God is to damn people. It is to damn people. To communicate the idea that God is this deity of love that doesn't really care is to give people spiritual cyanide. Because God's wrath is real. The wrath of God was an ever-present danger for God. It was holy, and they were not. What possibly could prevent the ultimate destruction of the nation? I mean, you would think inevitably this would be the case. And the answer is only what the Lord provided. I'll stop for a moment. This is the difference between God and religion. Religion is about what we do, what we provide, what activities we buy off God, whatever it is. That's what religion is, what we have done. The truth is what God alone can provide. There's nothing you can do to assuage the wrath of God, can you? Okay? All right, here it is. Here's your task. Put the sun out tomorrow. Here's a glass of water. I'll even give you a spaceship. It'll take you a while to get there. It's 93 million miles there. Going the speed of light, it would take you 8 minutes. That's about, 186,000. That's a trillion miles an hour, something crazy. It's going to take you a while to get there. But when you get there, take that glass of water and go whoosh. You will have more success putting out the sun with a glass of water than you or I will have any success by what we do placating the wrath of God. And you know what? So many Christians pretend as if God is not angry. So many preachers are communicating, and he's just up there and just has, somehow or another, the God of the Old Testament, the God in the God in the Old Testament was off his meds. He's just, a little schizophrenic. He was just, I'm sorry, but it's wrong, and we'll see that tonight. Only what the Lord provided. These people and these structures served as a barrier between the people and the Lord. They were designed so that the wrath of God would not consume people. But that was just a shadow. The question is, how could an unholy people survive the presence of the Lord who alone is holy? That's the children of Israel. If they were thinking at all, they realized they were stationed. Remember Chernobyl? Remember when that happened? If you ever read about it, the Soviet, the chopper pilots and the contractors, they did amazing things, because what they did is they flew over and they just dumped concrete into it. Just kept dumping concrete. Now the thing is, almost every one of those people died within hours. There was so much radiation that they flew over there, they dropped the concrete, came back, they died, another group came. Just unbelievable, fatal. That's the wrath of God. It's that kind. It's that toxic. It's that poisonous. It's that destructive. And what hope do we have? Where is there? We need a solution that is not ours, and this is it. The pictures and pieces of the Old Testament point us to God's solution to his wrath toward sinners. It's not what we do. He sent forth his Son not as a barrier to his wrath, but the answer to it. Because you know what? You could put all the concrete you can on the wrath and the judgment of God, but guess what? It's still there. The difference between what the Old Testament pictures and what the New Testament is in reality, the Old Testament pictures a barrier to keep people from the wrath of God. The New Testament says, let me tell you how it all comes to fruition. Jesus is not a barrier. He doesn't simply hold back the wrath of God. He has taken it full head on and absorbed it for his people. And there is no wrath. And God's people should say, amen. Because you're an Israelite, okay? You're an Israelite, and you realize that here's the Levites, and here's the tent, and here's the priest, and all these restrictions. Nonetheless, there is something fatal to me in the holiness of God. And if I approach too closely, what happens? Here in the New Testament, the amazing thing is that God doesn't say, stay clear. Aren't you holy, God? I certainly am. How in the world can I draw near? What hope do I have? Because I'm unclean and you're holy. And God says, to those who know my Son and who are in my Son, is there any wrath? He's taken it all. There's nothing there. That's why we are called to come with boldness and confidence. Not because, look at all the things I've done. And this is the thing that I've been praying and thinking, we relish and we delight and we say, it's really good to be saved. It surely is. But we do not relish in what it means to be in Christ. We don't relish it. We don't have goosebumps over it. We're not speechless over it. That's how I'm getting saved. Everything's cool. I can come in the presence of God. Oh, if we would just understand the holiness of God. And the only hope we have is the sufficiency of Jesus Christ. How different our lives would be. We have a Christ, and we're going to talk about this. We have a sense of a Christ now that basically doesn't even think of the holiness of God. We are so skewed that we do not every day wake up and thank God that we're in Christ. I mean, it's like all of a sudden, let's say I could make a bubble, okay, that is impregnable to the sun's energy and radiation, but it's clear enough so you can see it. So I put you in that bubble, right? And I go, whoop. I put you right on the surface of the sun. And you get to see right up close all the magnetic storms and the flares and the gurgling of the surface. It's 1,000,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,000,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You go a little deeper, it goes to 10 million, okay? And you're seeing, and all this is coming. You're not being burnt. You're not being cooked. You're not being irradiated. You're just seeing it, okay? What would be your attitude toward the bubble? Thank you for this bubble. Because if it weren't for the bubble, is that how we think of Christ? Every morning we go, thanks for being in Christ. For if it weren't for Christ, the wrath of God would rightfully be upon me forever and ever and ever and ever, and there would be of me an eternal destruction. The Old Testament is to get our eyes to see the all-sufficiency of Jesus Christ, the wrath absorber, not just merely the wrath barrier that the Levites and priests, because that's the best they could do. All they could do is be some kind of buffer, but it would still be there. The problem would still exist. God's holy, and we're not. Jesus Christ comes to absorb that wrath, and we're going to talk about it tonight, and solve the second problem. Because God has not given up His holiness. The 2 points is God is holy, absolutely holy. The second point is God has chosen a people for Himself as His possession who will be what? Who will be holy. And guess what? Jesus not only absorbs the wrath of God, but He deals with the need of our holiness. And to that we should thank God. Like I said, I love the Old Testament because it constantly is reminding me and turning my heart, my attention, and focus on Jesus Christ. I lay in bed and I say, what would I be without Christ? I mean, I know me, and I really don't know me. And what I know about me, I can't stand. So pathetic and so, what hope do I have in my accomplishments to gain the favor of God? Zero. Nothing is going in the negative column. But I am safe in Christ. In Christ. The wrath of God isn't waiting for me. The wrath of Christ has been exhausted in its entirety on His Son. The priests, the Levites, were small pictures of Jesus. We've got the real thing. And the question is this, honestly, deep down, in what or in whom do you trust? There are far too many Christians, and I put that in air quotes, who when the The final analysis, trust in what they do, what they haven't done. I don't chew and I don't, smoke and I don't go with the girls that do that type of. There's a lot of people. Oh man, I've towed the line well enough that God's going to be pleased with me. Being totally ignorant of the holiness of God. Question, really, I can't answer it for you. I can only answer for myself by the searching work of the Spirit of God. Just like, Pastor Gritton. How long was he in the ministry? 40 years. He was not just a pew sitter, he was a preacher. Was he the administrator of school? Administrator of the school? I mean, he went to college. I think didn't he get a master's degree from Temple? Okay, this was a preacher, man. Okay, all this time. And you know what? Until the time he came to Christ, you know he's trusting in for his ticket to heaven? What he did for God. What a earth-shattering reality to realize that's, as Isaiah says, all of our righteousness is filthy rags. Don't look at your performance. Don't look at your history. Don't look at the things you have done. Don't look at your education. Don't look at the classes you taught. Don't look at the sermons you've preached. The question is this for all of us. Is Christ our trust and hope alone? Because if that's true, there is no wrath. There is only welcome. Wow. I mean, really, wow. But if you are trusting in your accomplishments, and your performances, and your goody two-shoe-nesses, you're damned and doomed. And there is no way around the holiness of God. And the book of Numbers and the Old Testament just jams that back to us. And please, I'm as far as I can, I'm convinced of your salvation. But you know what? I'm not the God who sees in hearts. Please, ask the Spirit of God to search. Don't say, "Oh, I know a day in which I would." Don't go there. But ask the Spirit of God to reveal what is your real trust. Because if you get it wrong, forever you will face the fury and wrath of God. Get it right, no wrath, but welcome. Let's pray. Father in heaven, this is really serious stuff. And so much of the time we are almost ignorant or cavalier of your holiness. We're like Korah more times than we wish to admit. Oh, we will approach God, but we'll approach God our way, with our accomplishments. Like those in Matthew says, "Lord, look at all the things we've done." You have, though, provided for the likes of us, unholy and wicked people, a provision that is perfect. Your Son, Jesus Christ. And Lord, I pray that every one of us would be certain that we are in Christ and that He has borne the full fury and wrath of God for us. And because of Him and Him alone, we are welcomed into your presence. Lord, as we sing this last song, His Robes for Mine, let us think and ponder on these really important things. And may the Spirit of God just work freely in our hearts. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.